Some people pass through ordinary trials and barely notice them. Others collapse after a single storm. Then there are the very rare souls who seem to be forged in flame. They fall apart, lose everything, bleed, and yet keep rising. They aren't chosen because they have it easy or because they were handpicked for comfort. They are chosen because a larger design runs through their lives. Life hammers them, people turn against them, and the enemy throws every weapon possible, and still something pulls them back from the brink. If you've ever wondered why you keep standing when everyone else would have broken, why you survive wreckage that would swallow others, it's because you were selected for more than mere survival. You were selected to transform. Before we dive into these sacred reasons, pause for a moment. If this message finds you in a season of pain, doubt, or confusion, and it resonates, write 1 to 11 in the comments. That number isn't random. Treat it as a marker of alignment, a small sign of confirmation and synchronicity. If you haven't yet, subscribe and join this group of spiritual warriors, visionaries, and survivors. You didn't arrive here by accident. You're here because something inside you must awaken. 1. Their suffering carries meaning. The chosen do not endure pain that's pointless. Nothing in their story is purely accidental, not the darkest nights, not the deepest betrayals, not the loneliest failures. Every heartbreak becomes a corridor, every loss turns into a message, every disappointment is a redirection. They're enrolled in a sacred curriculum whose tuition is hardship, but whose graduation is awakening. What destroys others becomes the initiation that builds their spiritual mastery. Their soul reads pain like a language, a coded transmission from higher places meant to stir dormant strength. While many scream to the heavens, "Why me?" in search of answers, the chosen, even with tears flowing, ask, "What is this teaching me?" That tiny question unlocks everything. Pain becomes wisdom, and suffering becomes preparation rather than punishment. They aren't being shattered, they are being shaped. That's why they survive. Their agony is revelatory, not random. 2. They have spiritual protection. Many chosen people have stories that defy probability, moments when they should have died and somehow didn't, close calls that felt like miracles. Later they realize those moments weren't lucky, they were interventions. Invisible hands steered them away from bullets they never saw, betrayals that nearly caught them, traps that almost closed. Some call it intuition, others call it fate. The chosen recognize it as protection. It's not about religious perfection, it's about being marked by purpose, sealed by ancestral blessings, bound by divine agreements made before birth. Forces fight on their behalf, not only angels but the spirits of those who came before, prayers woven into their bloodline. What looks like luck to others is alignment to them. They walk through hell without burning because something larger walks with them. That's why they survive. When the world forgets, the heavens remember. 3. Their mission is unfinished. A chosen life cannot be taken while the work entrusted to them remains incomplete. This is a law etched not in books, but into the blueprint of their soul. In the lowest moments, when depression drains will, when exhaustion steals breath, when relief is begged for something deeper holds them back from leaving. A covenant, an agreement. Before their first breath, they accepted a burden. Some are tasked with breaking curses that haunt generations. Others are sent to care for society's discarded. A few will awaken thousands with a single sentence. Whatever the assignment, it anchors them. Even without full clarity, a conviction pulses like a second heart. You are not done. That conviction whispers through each collapse. You still have work to do. So death pauses. Heaven knows. They know. That's why they survive. Their life isn't exclusively theirs. It's a vessel of transformation, and until it spills its contents, the world cannot claim it. 4. They learn from what breaks them. For most people, suffering is an end, a shutdown, a reason to quit. For the chosen, it's the start of study. Every wound becomes material to examine, every trauma a code to decode. They don't simply endure in silence, they stay with the pain, listen to it, learn its patterns. Pain becomes teacher, wounds become wisdom. They understand suffering is not merely torment to tolerate, but a key to turn. While the world runs toward numbness, the chosen sit in the discomfort long enough to extract its message. What appears to destroy them actually refines them. They transmute trauma into transformation, grief into greatness. They become emotional alchemists, converting chaos into clarity. They don't ask for easy, they ask for depth. Their willingness to be broken without becoming bitter yields a strength beyond explanation. Others avoid the fire. The chosen enter and come out with diamonds. That's why they survive. They integrate the wound and turn it into power. 5. They're guided by a higher intelligence. Where many react, the chosen respond to revelation. A subtle guidance moves through dreams, instincts, signs, and synchronistic delays. They don't always understand the signals, but they feel them. A seemingly futile pause later proves to have avoided danger. A vague unease about a person prevents a later wound. This isn't paranoia, it's perception. The chosen are connected to something beyond ordinary cause and effect, a divine navigation system that reroutes them towards safety, growth, and destiny. Even when they ignore it and suffer, they learn and attune themselves more finely. They become fluent in the language of the invisible. This connection doesn't promise a trouble-free life, but it does make their journey directed and protected. They may not know the map, but they trust the compass. That's why they survive. They are not walking alone. Each hesitant step is part of a larger choreography signed by the divine. 6, because they can bear what others cannot. Those who are chosen were never called for comfort. They were called for capacity, emotional strength, mental resilience, and spiritual depth. Life places weights on their shoulders that would crush most people, yet somehow they remain standing. Not because they are superhuman, but because their souls have been tempered through lifetimes of preparation. There is a quiet endurance inside them, forged in hardship's fire. They cry in silence, they break behind closed doors. Yet when they step forward, they rise not for applause, but because survival demands it. Their very existence is an act of defiance. Where others collapse under pressure, the chosen are refined by it. They don't just survive the fire, they become it. There's a gravity to their spirit, a presence that creates space for others even when no one creates space for them. People often mistake this power. What looks like pride is actually divine anointing. What seems like stubbornness is sacred resilience. That's why others ask in disbelief, "How are you still here?" The answer is simple. They were built for it. Not with fragile flesh alone, but with a divine flame. And flame does not bow to pressure, it rises higher. 7, because their story was designed to rescue others. The survival of a chosen one is never just personal, it's generational. Their journey is more than their own. It is a testimony that ripples outward. Every scar, every comeback, every night they thought would be their last becomes a roadmap for someone else. They endure storms so others can find shelter. They bleed so that others may find healing. Their suffering is not wasted, it is sacred currency. Their once silenced voice becomes a song of freedom for those still shackled by shame. This is why the enemy failed to erase them. This is why death could not claim them. Because their life was meant to echo. Their presence alone testifies that survival is possible. In a culture obsessed with appearances, they embody authenticity. People don't just admire them, they need them. Not for perfection, but for permission. Permission to heal, to hope, to keep going. That's why chosen ones remain. Someone out there is waiting for their story to make them feel less alone. And when the chosen speak, It's never just words, it's resurrection. That is divine purpose. That is why they endure. 8, because their soul has walked here before. Many chosen ones move through this world with eyes that seem older than their years, carrying a wisdom that feels ancient. They are not merely old souls in metaphor, but in memory. This isn't their first life, and deep down they know it. That is why, even as children, they often felt misunderstood. They carry an unexplainable sadness, a sense of remembrance beyond this timeline. They read people's intentions before a word is spoken. Their pain carries layers not only of this life, but of battles fought in unseen realms and forgotten ages. And yet, with every return, they brought resilience. With every death, they gained perspective. With every rebirth, they sharpened their mission. That's why they don't panic when others do. Their calm in crisis seems supernatural because they've faced it all before. They've lost everything and rebuilt. They've walked into darkness and chosen light. They've tasted death and returned carrying vision. So when this life feels heavy, they don't collapse, they remember. And that remembrance makes them unbreakable. What others perceive as strange wisdom, eerie calm, or unnatural strength is simply evidence of lifetimes endured. This life is not their ending. It is only another ascent, another mission, another step in the eternal rise of the soul. 9, because God does not let go. At the heart of every chosen one's journey, beneath trauma, strength, silence, and tears, there is something immovable. The grip of God. Their survival isn't always about their own strength. It's about being held by a love that refuses to release them. Even when they run, even when they curse heaven in despair, even when they feel faithless and empty, they are not abandoned. When they fall, it is God who lifts them. When they hide, it is God who finds them in the dark corners of the soul. When they drown in grief or fade in silence, grace slips in through a crack. Sometimes not in thunder, but in whispers, in the kindness of a stranger, in a line from a book, in a sudden peace in the middle of chaos, or in the wind that softly says, "Keep going." This loyalty doesn't fade when they're weak. It doesn't withdraw when they're lost. It grows stronger, because God doesn't choose and forget, He chooses and commits. The chosen survive not merely because of their willpower, but because their lives are carried by mercy. Every time they want to quit, heaven leans in and says, "Not yet." Every time they think it's over, the divine declares, "This is only beginning." That is why they are still here, not because they never let go, but because God never did. In my view, being chosen doesn't mean living a life without pain or struggle. On the contrary, it means carrying a strength that few can understand, learning from every fall and transforming every scar into purpose. What fascinates me the most is realizing that every challenge, every hardship, is not random. It is preparation for something greater. To me, the true miracle is not just surviving, but surviving with awareness, courage, and the ability to light the way for others. Being chosen is, above all, an opportunity to become a channel of transformation, love, and wisdom. That's why I firmly believe that every challenge we face is, in reality, a divine invitation to awaken our highest self.